My boyfriend and my younger sister hit it off, but not in the way you'd expect. They then gaslit me into believing nothing was going on. So on my own wedding day, I exposed everything and ruined their lives, but in my own way. I am still digesting my boyfriend Ryan and my younger sister's little situation that destroyed my 5-year relationship. And yeah, you can probably guess what I'm about to say, or at least you think you can. But the truth is much darker than you can imagine. A couple months back, I started noticing some weird vibes between Ryan and Liv. She'd been engaged to her fiancé Daniel for about a year, with their wedding coming up fast. Liv had always dreamed of a fairy tale wedding, and Daniel, who comes from a well-off family, was happy to make her dreams come true. And that's why I was so quick to gaslight myself. Because just like any life-changing secret that comes to light, the clues started with little things big enough to make your stomach knot up, the kind of subtle interactions that make you doubt yourself because they're so easily dismissed individually, but together form a pattern. Liv would practically howl at Ryan's mediocre jokes, saying stuff like, "OMG, you're hilarious," when nobody else was even chuckling. She'd throw her head back, touch her throat, and look at him with sparkling eyes I'd never seen her direct at Daniel. She'd constantly find reasons to brush against him or touch his shoulder during conversations. Nothing overtly inappropriate. A hand lingering on his forearm, fingers grazing his back when moving past him in the kitchen, standing just a little too close during family photos. I'd catch her staring at him when she thought nobody was looking, but I was looking. The way her eyes would follow him across the room, how she'd adjust her posture whenever he walked in. One time, I watched her reapply her lipstick right before he arrived at our parents' house for Sunday dinner. She never did that for Daniel. After a family dinner where Liv was being particularly flirty, I brought it up with Ryan during our drive home. "Did you notice how Liv was acting tonight?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Ryan glanced over at me, then back at the road. He looked genuinely confused. "What do you mean?" I explained everything. The excessive laughing, unnecessary touching, and those lingering looks. But when he denied knowing anything, I pushed a little harder. "Remember when you told that story about your coworker's failed presentation? Nobody thought it was that funny, but Liv was practically falling out of her chair laughing. Didn't you notice?" He just shrugged it off. "Do you hear how you sound right now? It's obvious you're not thinking straight." When he put it that way, I felt ridiculous. Maybe I was just being insecure? "You're right," I conceded. "I'm being silly." Ryan reached over and squeezed my hand. "Trust me, there's nothing going on. She's just being Liv." Despite his reassurance, something felt off. Over the next few weeks, I watched them like a hawk. Liv always managed to sit next to Ryan at gatherings, finding little excuses to pull him into private conversations. She'd constantly asked for his help with wedding stuff, even when I was right there offering assistance. "I can help you with that," I'd say, and she'd wave me off with a dismissive, "Oh, I need someone with stronger arms." Things came to a head during my parents' backyard cookout 3 weeks before the wedding. I stepped inside to use the bathroom, and when I returned, I spotted Ryan and Liv in a corner of the yard by the old maple tree, standing way too close. She was giggling at something he said, one hand resting on his chest, and they immediately jumped apart when they saw me approaching. "What are you two talking about?" I asked, forcing a smile. Liv flicked her hair back, not quite meeting my eyes. "Oh, just boring wedding stuff. DJ recommendations." "Right," Ryan added quickly. "My buddy from college does some DJ work." I was telling Liv about him. I looked between them, noting Liv's overly casual stance and Ryan's slightly rumpled shirt. "Why didn't you mention that to me?" I could have told her. Ryan shrugged. "Just came up in conversation." That night, after we got home, I confronted Ryan more directly. "What was really going on with you and Liv today?" I asked, sitting on the edge of our bed. Ryan paused in the middle of changing his shirt. "What? Nothing. I told you we were just talking about music for the wedding reception, and that required standing 3 inches apart." He pulled his t-shirt on with more force than necessary. "We weren't standing that close." "Yes, you were. I saw you. And you jumped away from each other the second you noticed me. Because you were stomping over with this look on your face." His voice rose slightly, like you were about to accuse us of something. "Well, what am I supposed to think?" I stood up, hands clenched at my sides. "She's been all over you for weeks and you don't seem to mind one bit." When I asked why they needed to stand so close, he got defensive and said I was seeing problems that didn't exist. He insisted he was just being nice to my sister and didn't know how to set boundaries without making things awkward. "What am I supposed to do?" he demanded. "Push her away when she talks to me? Tell her to stop laughing at my jokes? How would that look to your family?" Our argument went around in circles for nearly an hour. He accused me of being paranoid and insecure, and I couldn't articulate exactly what I'd seen without it sounding petty and circumstantial. The next day, I decided to confront Liv directly. If Ryan wouldn't acknowledge what was happening, maybe she would. We met at a coffee shop near her apartment. What she said made me realize I wasn't going insane all along, and women's intuition is always right. When she arrived, 15 minutes late, she was bubbling with wedding excitement, barely pausing to ask how I was before launching into a detailed description of her final dress fitting. After listening to her prattle on about flower arrangements and seating tarts for 20 excruciating minutes, I cut to the chase. "We need to talk about how you've been acting around Ryan." Her face cycled through surprise, confusion, and finally anger. So quickly I almost missed the flash of something else. Guilt, before her expression settled into defensive indignation. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice pitching higher than normal. "You know exactly what I'm talking about, Liv. The constant touching, the private jokes, the way you look at him when you think no one's watching. It's inappropriate, and it's making me uncomfortable." She flat out denied everything, claiming she was just being friendly with someone who was practically family. Her fingers twisted the engagement ring on her left hand, a nervous habit I'd noticed before when she was lying. "This is insane," she said. "I'm getting married in 3 weeks, to Daniel, the love of my life. Why would I be flirting with your boyfriend?" When I pushed further, describing specific instances I'd noticed, she got defensive, her voice rising until nearby patrons started glancing our way. "If you can't trust your own sister, that's your problem, not mine," she snapped, gathering her purse and jacket. "Maybe you should ask yourself why you're so insecure in your relationship." She stormed out, leaving me sitting alone with 2 half-finished coffees and a knot in my stomach. When I told Ryan about the confrontation that evening, he was incredulous. "You actually confronted her? At a coffee shop?" He paced our living room. "What were you thinking?" "I was thinking someone needed to address the elephant in the room," I replied, my voice trembling. "Since you wouldn't." He thought I'd made a huge mistake. "Did you really have to upset her right before her wedding? She's already stressed enough without you throwing around accusations." "They weren't accusations. I was just trying to set some boundaries." "Boundaries for what? A problem that doesn't exist?" He suggested I should have handled it differently, making me feel like I was the problem. The following days were brutal. Liv completely ghosted me. No calls, no texts, nothing. My parents called, concerned about why Liv was so upset. Mom's voice was tight with disappointment. "What's this about you accusing your sister of something inappropriate with Ryan?" "She's devastated, Sarah." I tried explaining, choosing my words carefully, but but they also thought I was overreacting. Dad sighed heavily into the phone. Honey, I know you and Liv have always had your competitive moments, but this is her time. She's about to get married. Whatever you think you're seeing, well, maybe it's just wedding jitters making everyone a little emotional. With my role as bridesmaid now in question and the wedding approaching, I felt completely lost. I doubted myself constantly. Was I really imagining everything? Was this all in my head? I attempted to reach Liv multiple times, calls, voicemails, even showing up at her apartment one evening with a peace offering, but she wouldn't engage. Ryan kept insisting I should just let it go, that everything would be fine if I'd just apologize and chalk it up to a misunderstanding. The wedding's in 2 weeks. Do you really want to be on bad terms with your only sister for her big day? When I suggested skipping the wedding altogether, he looked horrified. You can't miss your sister's wedding? Your family would never forgive you. His insistence that I attend the wedding, despite everything, struck me as odd. If I was truly being paranoid and there was nothing between them, wouldn't he understand my discomfort? Update. Things got worse after confronting Liv. She told our mom about my accusations, presenting herself as the victim of my unfounded jealousy. Mom called me in a rage, screaming about how I could be so selfish right before Liv's wedding. My father, normally the mediator, was similarly disappointed. We raised you better than this, he said. Family comes first, always. I don't know what's gotten into you. My parents were furious. Liv still wouldn't speak to me, and Ryan kept insisting I was being paranoid. Friends who heard about the situation through the family grapevine were divided. Some thought I might be onto something. Others suggested I was overreacting due to turning 30 and seeing my younger sister get married first. It's natural to feel jealous, my well-meaning friend Tara suggested. Not that you'd actually think something's happening, but maybe subconsciously you're looking for problems because you're frustrated that Ryan hasn't proposed yet. I wanted to scream. This wasn't about jealousy or biological clocks. This was about the sick feeling in my gut every time I saw them together. A week before the wedding, I went to my parents' house to try making peace. I hadn't been invited to the final bridal shower or the rehearsal dinner, and the idea of showing up to the wedding itself without resolving this tension was unbearable. I brought a handwritten card for Liv, apologizing for causing stress, without actually retracting my concerns. As I approached the front door, I heard hushed voices coming from the side of the house. My parents weren't supposed to be home. Curious, I walked around to the garden and froze in absolute shock. There were Ryan and Liv, partially hidden behind a large decorative shrub, in a full-on passionate embrace. Her legs were wrapped around his waist, his hand was under her shirt, and they were kissing so intensely they didn't even notice me standing there. The sound that escaped my throat wasn't even human. It felt like someone had punched me in the gut. What the actual fuck? I screamed, my voice shaking, my entire body trembling. They jumped apart, looking horrified. Liv went pale, lipstick smeared across her chin, while Ryan stammered, "This isn't what it looks like." I almost laughed at the cliche. Really? Because it looks like you're fucking my sister against my parents' garden wall. Tears streamed down my face. How could you? My own sister and my boyfriend? Liv started crying too. I'm so sorry. We didn't mean for this to happen. It just did. And then we couldn't stop. And how long? I demanded, my voice breaking. How long has this been going on? They exchanged a guilty look that told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This had been happening right under my nose, while I was made to feel crazy for suspecting exactly what was actually happening. Sarah, please. Ryan stepped toward me. Let us explain. It's complicated. I couldn't bear to hear their excuses. I ran back to my car and drove away while they shouted after me. My phone blew up with calls from Ryan, Liv, and eventually my mom, but I ignored them all, barely able to see the road through my tears. At home, I packed a bag with shaking hands and checked into a hotel across town. I texted Ryan, "We're done. Don't contact me again," turned off my phone, and paid cash so there would be no credit card trail for Ryan to follow. Alone in the sterile hotel room, I finally broke down completely, sobbing until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe through it. Every memory of the three of us together was now tainted. How many times had they exchanged knowing looks right in front of me? How many coincidental meetings had been planned? How many times had Ryan been late coming home because he was with her? Second update. After a few days of hiding out in the hotel, I realized Daniel deserved to know the truth. Whatever was happening between Liv and Ryan, Daniel was about to marry a woman who had been cheating on him. I couldn't let that happen, even if it meant being the messenger everyone would blame. I finally turned my phone back on to find dozens of missed calls and messages. Ryan begging for forgiveness, claiming it was just physical, and didn't mean anything. Liv alternating between tearful apologies and angry accusations that I was trying to ruin her life. My parents expressing concern about my whereabouts, clearly unaware of what had actually happened. I called Daniel, my heart pounding as the phone rang. He answered on the third ring, his voice wary. "Sarah, is everything okay? No one's heard from you in days." I took a deep breath. "No, Daniel, everything is not okay. There's something you need to know before the wedding." I explained everything from my initial suspicions to catching them together. When I finished, there was a long silence. "I had my doubts too," he finally said, his voice flat. Little things that didn't add up, but I convinced myself I was being paranoid. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. You don't deserve this." He thanked me calmly and hung up. I sat there for a long time afterward, wondering what he would do with the information. On the evening of the wedding, I was sitting alone in my hotel room when my phone lit up with a call from my cousin Jess. I hesitated before answering. "Hello? Holy shit, Sarah, you won't believe what just happened," she whispered urgently. "The wedding is off. Like, nuclear explosion off." Apparently everything seemed normal until the vows. The ceremony had been beautiful. Perfect weather, stunning decorations, Liv looking radiant in her gown. The minister had gone through the usual ceremony, and then it was time for the bride and groom to exchange their personalized vows. Daniel stepped forward, looking handsome but oddly calm in his tuxedo. He cleared his throat and announced to everyone that he couldn't marry someone who had betrayed her own sister by sleeping with her boyfriend. He just came out and said it, in front of everyone, Jess reported. He said he'd been wrestling with whether to go through with the wedding after you told him what happened, but ultimately decided he couldn't start a marriage based on such a fundamental betrayal. Daniel told my stunned parents that this was the real reason I disappeared. Not because of some petty sisterly squabble as they've been led to believe, but because I'd caught their precious Liv and my boyfriend in a compromising position at their own house. Apparently, after my call, he'd done some digging of his own and found text messages on Liv's phone that confirmed everything. He read a few of the most damning ones aloud to the horrified wedding guests before walking out, leaving her at the altar. Liv collapsed in tears as Daniel walked out, leaving her in a heap of white tulle and lace. My parents were shocked and confused while guests whispered among themselves, some discreetly leaving, others staying to witness the spectacular meltdown. "It was like something from a movie," Jess said. "Everyone's in shock. Your parents are trying to get answers from Liv, but she's completely hysterical." I felt oddly numb as Jess recounted the details. The truth was finally out, but at what cost? My relationship with Liv is shattered. My relationship with Ryan is over, and my family is in crisis. "Are you okay?" Jess asked after a moment of silence. "This is all so messed up I can't even imagine how you're feeling." "I don't know what I'm feeling," I admitted. Relief that Daniel knows the truth, I guess. Sadness about everything else. "I'm taking things one day at a time. I've rented a small apartment across town and moved my essential belongings out of the place I shared with with Ryan. I've blocked his number and all his social media accounts. Some mutual friends have reached out, and I've been honest about what happened, refusing to carry shame that isn't mine to bear. I'll eventually have to face my family, but this experience has taught me to trust my instincts and stand my ground, even when everyone tells me I'm wrong. My mother called yesterday, her voice small and broken, asking if we could talk. I'm not ready yet, but someday I will be. Thank you to everyone who supported me. And to anyone in a similar situation, trust your gut and don't let anyone gaslight you into doubting yourself. You know what you know, and you deserve people in your life who respect and honor the truth, however uncomfortable it might be.